My name is Eleanor Voss, a 34-year-old architect based in London, and my life has always walked a tightrope between precision and chaos. At work, structure is everything: blueprints, exact measurements, timelines that leave no room for deviation. It's a world that makes sense to me, one I can control. But my family? They exist in a different rhythm altogether. They thrive in unpredictability, guided more by feelings and spontaneity than by plans or rules. Their world has always clashed with mine, leaving me somewhere in between, trying to navigate both without losing myself. So when Mr. Alistair Pembroke, my elderly neighbor with his ever-present tweed jackets and shoes that gleamed a little too brightly, stopped me on the steps of our building one crisp October evening, I wasn't expecting anything unusual. He was a man of routine, the kind who took his tea at precisely 4 o'clock and read the newspaper cover to cover. But there was something about his expression that night, hesitant, as if weighing every word before speaking, that made me pause. And then, in his soft, measured tone, he began to tell me a story. One that would make me question everything I thought I knew about my past. If you're still listening, we want to sincerely thank you for spending your time with us. Truly means a lot. We'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments and let's see how far this message has reached. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I highly recommend doing it now so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. These aren't just ordinary stories, they're filled with meaningful life lessons that can inspire, teach, and stay with you long after the video ends. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. Eleanor, there's been screaming coming from your house, he said, his voice low, as though even uttering the words might disturb something fragile between us. His eyes flicked toward my Georgian townhouse, where the ivy curled up its brick facade, glowing faintly beneath the soft amber light of the street lamp. I blinked, shifting the weight of my grocery bags in my arms. Screaming? That's impossible. I've been in Edinburgh for 2 weeks. It was true. Project had taken longer than expected, an 18th century manor with foundation issues, crumbling plaster, and enough moisture damage to give the whole place a scent like forgotten books. I'd been neck-deep in restoration plans, sleeping in a rented flat near the site. My house back in London had been locked up tight. I'm not careless about these things. Deadbolts, a smart lock synced to my phone, security notifications. I wasn't paranoid, just experienced. Living alone teaches you the rules. Alistair adjusted his glasses slowly, the way he always did when preparing to say something that might not be welcome. His expression hovered somewhere between neighborly concern and quiet suspicion. It was loud, Eleanor. My wife was worried. She said it sounded like someone was in real distress. We almost called the police. I let out a short laugh, reflexive, thin. You probably heard something from the street. There's a new couple 2 doors down. They've been doing renovations late at night. Dust and tension, I suppose. But his gaze didn't soften. He kept looking at the house as though it might answer for me. I felt a faint itch crawl across the back of my neck, and suddenly the weight of the grocery bags felt heavier than it should have. Thanks for letting me know, I said, offering a quick nod before turning toward the door. Inside, I kicked the door closed with my heel and placed the bags on the console table by the wall. The soft click of the lock behind me was oddly reassuring. But even before I turned on the lights, I knew something wasn't right. The air in the foyer smelled different. Faint but unmistakable lavender. Not the subtle kind you find in candles or sprays, but sharper, more clinical, like something folded into linens or used in antiseptic wipes. My cedarwood diffuser, always on a timer, hadn't been touched in 2 weeks. And yet the entire space carried this new scent like a whisper. I stepped further in, switching on the hallway light. Parquet floor beneath my boots gleamed unnaturally. Not just clean, polished. Someone had buffed the grains so well I could see the overhead light mirrored back at me. I walked slowly, carefully, the silence pressing in from all sides. The stairs creaked slightly under my foot, just like they always did. The hallway was dark still. My bedroom door was ajar. I pushed it open with the tips of my fingers. The bed was made. Not just pulled together, but precisely arranged, pillows stacked neatly, duvet folded into a crisp triangle at the foot, sheets smoothed without a wrinkle. Kind of bed you find in display windows or high-end hotels, not in my real life. Before I left for Edinburgh, I'd thrown on the blanket in a rush, half-packed and half-running late. I remember that clearly. I'm not meticulous, and I certainly don't tuck in corners. A chill settled somewhere between my ribs. Someone had been here. Not a break-in, not a robbery. Nothing taken. But someone had entered this space, had moved through it quietly, methodically. They had touched things, cleaned things, arranged my life into an order that wasn't mine. And they had left no trace, except the faint scent of lavender. I called my mother, Beatrice, the moment I sat down, still standing in the hallway with one shoe on. There was a tightness at the base of my skull that no amount of chamomile tea could dissolve. Her number was already at the top of my favorites list. Not because we were particularly close, but because when things went sideways, she was always somehow involved. She picked up on the third ring with her signature lilt. "Darling, how was Scotland?" "Fine," I said, sharper than I intended. I didn't have the energy for small talk. "Were you at my house?" Pause, then an airy, practiced laugh. "Oh, just to water your ferns. They were looking dreadful, by the way. You really must miss them properly." My grip tightened on the phone. "Did you make my bed? Polish the floors?" Another laugh, high, musical, rehearsed. "Well, it was a bit untidy, darling." I couldn't resist a quick spruce up. "You know how I am." I rubbed my temple, inhaling slowly through my nose. "Mom, I've asked you not to do that." Her response came swiftly, too swiftly. "Of course not." "Don't be silly." Her tone climbed an octave, bright and defensive. I knew it too well. That forced lightness she used to cover her tracks. A blanket of charm to smother any confrontation. I didn't press further, jet lag had settled behind my eyes, but her words didn't sit right. Beatrice Voss was a former art teacher who had, over the past decade, reinvented herself as a crystal enthusiast and part-time Reiki practitioner. She wore gauzy scarves year-round, smelled of patchouli and peppermint oil, and used phrases like energy blockages and soul cleansing with absolute sincerity. Her life was one long interpretive dance through vague spirituality and loosely defined boundaries. And boundaries had never been her strength. Growing up, my childhood had been a kaleidoscope of borrowed things. My toys were Clara's toys. My clothes mysteriously migrated into her drawers. Even my bedroom was once offered to a visiting cousin without my consent, just for a week, Mum had said, as if I were merely a guest in my own space. It wasn't sharing. It was erasure. And if I protested, I was told I needed to loosen up, to let go of control. So I adapted by building structures, face, rules, architecture. When I bought this house 5 years ago, it wasn't just about property ownership. It was rebellion. It was the first time in my life where every inch of a space was mine, my taste, my rules, my name on the deed. No floral mandalas. No incense sticks wedged into cracks in the windowsill. And no one rearranging furniture to improve the flow. And yet here I was. My house had been touched. Altered, as if it were a stage set someone had tidied after the curtain closed. Alistair's voice echoed in my memory, screaming. It had been almost easy to brush it off earlier. Blame faulty memory, urban noise, maybe even a foxfight in the alley. But it wasn't fading. It gnawed. Each time I walked from room to room, I saw it again. The disturbingly perfect bed, the unnatural shine of the wood floor, the lavender scent that didn't belong to me. I needed clarity. And more than that, I needed proof. Before my next trip, a week-long conference in Copenhagen on sustainable urban design, I made a decision. I installed cameras. Not big, conspicuous ones. These were discreet, almost invisible, a motion-activated lens tucked into the bookshelf in the living room. Another behind the kitchen clock, angled to capture both the entrance and the common space. One in the hallway upstairs and one unapologetically above the mirror in my bedroom. Just enough to give me a picture, to make sense of what was happening when I wasn't home. I didn't tell anyone. I simply sent my mother a text the morning of my flight, heading to Copenhagen. Please, just water the plants. Nothing else. Her reply came within a minute. Safe travels, love. I'll behave. That should have reassured me. It didn't. I sat at the gate in Heathrow Terminal 5, sipping lukewarm coffee and trying to read a journal article on biophilic interiors, but my mind kept circling back. My house no longer felt like a sanctuary. Felt like a set piece. Touched. Rearranged. Interpreted. Even the idea of cameras made me uncomfortable. I didn't like the feeling of spying, even on my own space. But this wasn't paranoia. It was response. The rules had been broken. Something had crossed a line. An instinct told me it wasn't just about my mother's well-meaning meddling. There was something beneath it. A wrong note in a familiar song. It wasn't the first time Beatrice had dismissed my boundaries with a chuckle. But this was different. This wasn't her moving a few cushions or tidying the spice rack. This was an intrusion deep enough that I felt displaced in my own home. And when she said she hadn't brought anyone else, I didn't believe her. The first night, I sat in my hotel room with the curtains drawn tight and the surveillance app open on my laptop. My hotel in Copenhagen was modern, minimal, and quiet, exactly the kind of space I normally loved. But tonight, the sterile calm only amplified my unease. At noon, the motion alert chimed. I clicked the notification. There she was. Mum. She breezed in through the front door in her usual flutter of scarves and bangles, humming to herself. She went straight to the ferns, misting them with exaggerated care, then wandered to the mantel and shifted the vase of dried hydrangeas 2 inches to the left. She squinted, tilted her head, moved it back again. I sighed. Annoying but harmless. That was Mum. Everything was a performance. She spent 15 minutes floating from room to room, fussing with cushions, rearranging the coffee table books into an entirely less logical stack, and then finally left. The door clicked shut. The feed went still. I closed my laptop and told myself I was overreacting, that I'd projected too much meaning onto the scent of lavender and the folded duvet, that I just needed sleep and a break from my own hypervigilance. But the second night, everything changed. At exactly 9:03 p.m., the feed lit up again. Motion detected. I assumed it was Mum again, probably back to missed something. It wasn't. The door opened and a man stepped inside. He was tall, broad-shouldered, in a dark wool coat carrying a worn leather satchel. He moved with quiet assurance, like someone who belonged there. But I had never seen him before in my life. I leaned closer to the screen, my heart accelerating. Then another figure entered, a woman wearing a crimson scarf and clutching a bottle of Prosecco. She giggled at something the man said, kicking off her shoes without hesitation. They were followed by more people. Couple in matching velvet jackets. A man carrying a guitar case. A woman in stiletto heels balancing a tray filled with what looked like candles. They moved through my house like they knew it, like it was theirs. No hesitation. No confusion. One of them dimmed the lights. Another began setting small tea lights around the room. I watched in stunned silence as candles flickered to life, their glow casting strange shadows against my walls. Then the music began, low, rhythmic, electronic. Not loud, but pulsing, like a heartbeat threaded through every surface. I stared, unable to move, as a woman in a sheer blouse unfurled a deep burgundy velvet cloth across my oak coffee table. She began arranging items I couldn't quite identify: small glass bottles, glinting stones, what looked like feathers, and something that resembled a ceremonial dagger. It didn't feel theatrical. It felt deliberate, sacred, and deeply, deeply wrong. My phone buzzed. I flinched. Colleague's name lit up the screen. "Eleanor, where are you?" "The client's waiting for your presentation notes." I'd completely forgotten the time difference. With shaking fingers, I switched screens and logged into Zoom, my camera flickering on. I sat rigidly under the bland glow of hotel lighting as one of our partners launched into a detailed discussion on eco-friendly insulation materials. I nodded along, eyes glassy, mouthing the right phrases at the right intervals while my mind screamed, "Who are these people in my house?" Call dragged on. 10 minutes. Then 20. I answered a question about thermal bridging with a voice that didn't feel like mine. My mouth moved, but my body was still trapped in that moment, watching strangers invade the space I had so carefully crafted to be mine and mine alone. As soon as I clicked "Leave meeting," I reopened the feed. And froze. My living room had transformed. Candles burned in every corner. My white sofa, the one I'd splurged on from a boutique in Notting Hill, was now draped in silk throws I'd known. People lounged across it in languid postures, one man shirtless, his torso glistening in the low light. Another sat cross-legged on the floor, twirling a length of silk rope between his fingers with slow, deliberate focus. Laughter rippled through the room, soft, indulgent, private. A woman danced barefoot near the fireplace, her hips swaying in lazy circles. Her earrings caught the candlelight as she spun. She was holding a ceramic bowl in both hands, smoke rising from it in slow coils. I couldn't tell what she was burning. My hand trembled on the mouse pad. I couldn't look away. More figures moved through the room, murmuring to each other. Some held glasses of wine, others held nothing but each other. Their energy was intimate, ritualistic, like a gathering on the edge of something sacred or unhinged. Then one of them passed directly in front of the bookshelf camera, so close I could see his jawline, the curve of his lip as he whispered something to the woman behind him. She laughed and kissed his neck. I felt nauseous. This wasn't a party. It wasn't a break-in. It was something else entirely. I slammed my laptop shut, heart pounding, chest tight. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. The room around me, the safe, anonymous hotel room, felt like it was tilting. The walls were too clean, the air too sterile. And still, in my mind, the flicker of candlelight danced on the parquet floor of my home. How long had this been happening? How did they get in? And most of all, who let them? Then my phone rang again. I stared at the screen for a beat before answering, my heart already sinking. An unfamiliar number. London prefix. "Ms. Voss," a calm, clipped voice said. "This is Officer Clara Henshaw with the Metropolitan Police. We've had reports of a disturbance at your address. Are you currently present at the property?" "No," I said, struggling to keep my voice even. "I'm in Copenhagen for work. I didn't authorize anyone to be there." There was a pause, paper rustling on her end. "Your mother claims she had permission to host a gathering. We also noted the presence of surveillance devices in the residence. Some of the attendees are upset about being recorded. Can you confirm your stance?" I sat down hard on the edge of the bed. I told her to water the plants. That's it. I have the message time-stamped. I can send it to you. "Please do," Officer Henshaw said. "You're not in any legal trouble at this time, but there may be licensing and consent issues involved. We'll be in touch. Thank you for your cooperation." Call ended. I stared at the black screen of my phone, pulse roaring in my ears. My breath came in shallow bursts. I was barely holding it together. Less than 5 minutes later, my mother called. "Eleanor, darling," she began, her tone breathy with faux calm, "just tell the police you knew about it. It was only a small gathering like the old days. Nothing harmful." I stood and began pacing the narrow width of my hotel room. "Old days?" I snapped, my voice rising. "Mom, I saw what was on my table. The velvet cloth, the objects, whatever that was, it wasn't a bloody book club." There was a long, uneasy pause. Then I heard my father's voice in the background. I hadn't even known he was home. His voice was low, strained. "We didn't think you'd understand." I stopped pacing, stunned into silence. "Understand what?" I said finally. "That you turned my home into some kind of underground club? That people were writhing on my furniture while you played host behind my back?" "It was for Clara," Mum said quickly. Too quickly. I closed my eyes. What does Clara have to do with this? "She needed help with the mortgage," Mum continued, almost pleading. "She and Tim are behind, and we thought just while you were traveling we could facilitate something. A few evenings. Quiet. Exclusive. No damage." My jaw tightened. "You didn't even ask me. You didn't even tell me." "I knew you'd say no," she replied. "You're so rigid about space, Eleanor. Always have been. You don't bend, you snap. We thought." I didn't let her finish. I ended the call with one touch, my vision blurring as tears of fury, not sadness, filled my eyes. I couldn't sit still. I walked laps around the room, my body vibrating with disbelief. The violation wasn't just physical, it was psychic, emotional. This wasn't a broken vase or a scuffed wall. This was a dismantling of trust, of boundaries I'd spent years establishing and more years learning to protect. Later that afternoon, a message pinged into my Instagram inbox. Margaret, an old family friend. She used to braid my hair at summer festivals when I was 8, feed me sticky ginger cake, tell me stories about moon rituals and herbal tinctures. She was one of them, the inner circle of my parents' free-spirited past. Her tone was apologetic from the outset. "Eleanor, I'm so sorry. I thought you'd approved it. Your mum said it was all arranged. If I'd known otherwise." Attached was a link. I tapped it, heart pounding. It led to a sleek, well-designed website. Black background. Elegant serif font. A swirling gold logo that looked vaguely astrological. The homepage read, "Curated evenings of intention, connection, and ceremony, London." Below that, a rotating carousel of high-quality images. I froze. My living room. My coffee table. My rug, with its worn blue fringe and wine stain near the corner. People reclined on my furniture, candlelight catching the gold accents I'd chosen carefully, painstakingly, to make the space feel like home. One photo showed a circle of guests holding hands, heads bowed, with rose petals strewn on the oak floorboards. Another showed a figure pouring what looked like oil onto a guest's palm, with text beside it, "Touch-based energy attunement included in Tier 2 donation." I scrolled faster. The dates matched my travel schedule precisely. Every business trip, every overnight conference, each one had been leveraged for one of these intimate gatherings. And then I saw it. Contact email, starflower.revival@gmail.com. Starflower. Mum's old nickname. A name she hadn't used since the late 90s, back when she ran women's circles in the conservatory and wore anklets with bells. She must have thought the reversal, Starflower Revival, would mask it enough to avoid suspicion. It didn't. I set the phone down on the bed, breathing hard. This wasn't just my parents' reckless whim. It was a full-fledged operation. Advertised. Monetized. Repeated. And done without my consent on my property, with no regard for what it might cost me legally, professionally, emotionally. They didn't think I'd understand. They were right. When I returned to London, they were already there, standing in front of my flat, as if waiting for forgiveness to arrive on the next bus. Mum looked smaller than usual, her scarf slipping from one shoulder, eyes red-rimmed but dry. Dad just stood beside her, hands folded behind his back, the picture of reluctant guilt. Not the kind that begs for pardon, just the sort that hopes things won't get worse. "You didn't have to involve the police," Mum said quietly. "I didn't," I answered, unlocking the door without looking at her. "Your guests did." Inside, the flat smelled faintly of eucalyptus and something sour, like guilt steeped in old tea leaves. I walked through slowly, each step reminding me of what had been taken, not objects, but ownership. Face. Safety. Trust. "We were helping Clara," Dad said from behind me. "Her new house, it's too much for them. They're drowning in repayments. And you thought turning my home into an illegal lounge was the solution?" I kept my voice steady, though my hands were trembling. "You didn't ask. You didn't even hint. You just used it." "It was empty," Mum offered, her voice brittle. "It was just sitting here." "It's not empty," I said, turning to face them. "It's mine." The conversation didn't last much longer. There were no screaming matches, no emotional theatrics. Just short sentences and long silences. They left, slowly, like people walking away from a grave they weren't ready to visit. What followed was quiet but brutal. Within a week, I received a formal notice from the City Council, zoning violations due to unauthorized events in a residential property. A polite threat of legal action unless I paid the fines. Then came a thick envelope from HMRC. Unreported income, they said. My address had hosted multiple gatherings that involved donations, all traceable. Apparently, someone had filed a complaint anonymously. Probably one of the guests who didn't enjoy being secretly recorded. Clara called next. Furious. "You've ruined everything," she snapped. "Mum and Dad can't help us anymore." "The mortgage." "They used my house," I interrupted. "Did you know what was happening?" Silence. A slow, stretched silence. That was all the answer I needed. I listed the flat the next morning. There was no point salvaging anything, not the memories, not the furniture, not the lingering scent of betrayal. I packed only what I needed, left the rest, and never looked back. The new place is in Bristol, on a quieter street with old brick facades and generous light. It's smaller, but it feels bigger because it's mine. Every book, every chair, every creak in the floorboards, they all belong to me. There are no spare keys, no surprises, no borrowed favors disguised as family love. My parents tried calling. Once, twice, then less and less. I didn't block them. I just didn't answer. There was no big confrontation, no dramatic fallout, just silence, a slow mutual drifting. I think we all understood something had shifted permanently. Some lines, once crossed, don't leave a way back. You can pretend things are the same, but the foundation's cracked. And in architecture, cracks deepen. Quietly, unforgivingly. There are days when I miss them. Not who they are, but who I thought they were. I miss the idea of a family that respected boundaries, that knew the difference between helping and exploiting. Margaret messaged me again weeks later. She wanted to apologize again. Said she'd never seen my parents in that light before. Said maybe we all project what we need onto people until they disappoint us. Then we start seeing what was there all along. I'm still piecing together the trust they shattered. Like tiling a bathroom with shards instead of squares, it might look whole from a distance, but up close, nothing fits the way it used to. So, what do you think? Was I too harsh, or did I let them off too lightly? I'm not sure anymore. I only know I'm tired. and that for the first time in a long while I sleep through the night. Alone, but undisturbed. Let me know your thoughts. 5 lessons I learned after my family used my flat without asking. When your own parents betray your trust, the lesson hits deeper than any stranger's offense. Looking back, here are 5 things I've learned. Maybe they'll help you draw your own boundaries too. When silence can be more brutal than yelling. We didn't scream, we didn't cry. Just said what needed to be said, and that quiet hurt more than shouting ever could. 2, ownership isn't just legal, it's emotional. They said my flat was empty, but it was mine. Held my memories, my space, my peace. Using it without permission stripped all of that away. 3, family doesn't mean free access. Love isn't a blank check. My home wasn't a backup plan for someone else's poor decisions. Even blood should knock before entering. For some boundaries once broken stay broken. I didn't block them. I just stopped picking up. And they stopped calling. That's how distance begins, not in anger but in the absence of effort. 5, healing isn't loud. It's packing up, moving on, sleeping through the night without fear someone else holds a key to your life. Maybe you've been there too, left picking up the shards of what you thought was love, only to realize it was control dressed as care. If this story resonated with you, drop a comment below. Have you ever felt used by those closest to you? I'd love to hear how you handled it. And if you want more stories about real choices, quiet strength, and lessons learned the hard way, like, share, and subscribe. It helps more than you know.